Hello, welcome everyone. Carroll Patrizi here. Just so honored to be your host today and to be welcoming, oh my goodness, the lovely Nancy Levin to our conversation on accountability. Nancy, she's a writer, she's a life coach, she does shadow work. If you don't know what that is, you're in for a treat.
Hmm.
And it has been such a pleasure getting to speak with Nancy, learn from her. And I know that you're going to receive. So open up your mind to receive this beautiful offering from Nancy today. Welcome. I'm so happy you're here. Please introduce yourself properly.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here too. I think most simply put, I am a life coach. I am a best-selling author, podcast host, and the founder of Levin Life Coach Academy, where I train and certify coaches in my methods and models and techniques.
My goodness. And you have done all that in a very short amount of time. I'm so proud of you. Tell us a little bit about your journey that, brought you here to this lovely, really an important business of life coaching.
Yes, so I was the event director at Hay House Publishing for 12 years, and it was my dream job. I never in a million years thought I would leave my job. And yet, as often happens, a crisis becomes a catalyst for change.
Yes.
I had my own crisis in the form of blowing up my marriage.
Yes.
And as that was happening, I always like to say I had a front row seat and a backstage pass to all of the teachers, the authors, the speakers. But it wasn't until I was at my rock bottom that their teachings really landed in me. And of all the incredible luminaries I had access to and was quite close to, including Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, the list goes on, it was Debbie Ford and her shadow work that really landed in me to allow me to create momentum in my own life to make the changes that I needed to. And part of that process was ultimately getting divorced and really recognizing that I had expended a lot of energy projecting an image of perfection to the world. I had been managing the perception of others. I only wanted to be seen through the lens that I gave people to see me through.
Mhm.
And so I needed to take a good, deep, long look within. I needed to be willing to tell myself the truth. And from there, I realized that I wanted to do Debbie's year-long life coach certification program. Now, again, I had no designs on being a coach, I had no designs on leaving Hay House, but once I had been certified, I was unrecognizable from the woman I was when I entered that program. And it became very clear to me that my calling was to help other people get free.
Mhm.
And so I took a little bit of time and I ultimately left my position at Hay House about 10 years ago now.
Unbelievable. You know, quite often, as you said, it takes a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine said one time, you've either had a crisis or you will have a crisis. It's
Right.
just right. Not to look for them, but they'll show up. This is I think so many will be able to resonate with your story. And, many people have divorced, and I was married before
Mm-hmm.
and in another marriage. And you and I spoke about this just a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, that I never saw myself as a person that would get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And it was after that time I thought, oh my goodness, into my second marriage, I thought, ooh, I'm recognizing some of the same feelings. And when I said, not that it was a fun day, but I thought, oh goodness, the common denominator.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I really, that's when my journey into accountability started for
Mm-hmm.
me. So the good news is from crisis comes growth
Mm-hmm.
if you're willing to take that
Mm-hmm.
or accept it. And if you would please explain to our audience, I had the pleasure of talking with you a little bit, so I have a
Mm-hmm.
tiny insight. Talk to us a little bit about the shadow work that has meant so much to you.
Mm-hmm. So, shadow in this context was first coined by Carl Jung, Swiss psychoanalyst.
Mhm.
And simply put, our shadow is in our unconscious. And our shadow is where the parts of ourselves that we disown, that we reject, that we deny,
Mm.
that we reject reside. So we all experience as we're growing up messages around it's okay to be this, it's not okay to be that.
Mm.
And we begin crafting our persona. We begin packaging ourselves to be palatable to everyone else around us. And in doing so, we ultimately deny access to parts of ourselves and we submerge them into the shadow. The parts of us that we don't want to be and don't think we are, as well as the parts that we'd like to be but think we're not. So all qualities are charge neutral. We are the ones who end up putting the charge of positive or negative on them. So
Mm.
I'm talking about qualities that we don't want to be and don't think we are. Qualities for me like lazy, needy, irresponsible. Qualities we want to be that we may not believe we are. Qualities like creative, intelligent, sensual. So we play with the light and the dark here, recognizing that any quality we can see in someone else exists within us as well. And it is the goal of the soul to be whole. So we are whole, regardless of how many countless times we may think we're broken. We
Yes.
are always whole. But what we need to do is reclaim the lost pieces of ourselves so we can actually truly embody our wholeness. That is the aim of shadow work. Because here in the reservoir of the shadow, where all of these parts of ourselves that we've rejected live, that also creates a fertile breeding ground for beliefs that we hold about ourselves, conclusions we draw that hold us back, as well as commitments and promises that we make that also hold us back.
Yes.
So it's essential to be willing to look within and see what needs to be reconciled so that we can live our lives in alignment.
Yes, you can't, I certainly, I can't think about a shadow without thinking about Peter Pan chasing a shadow. Uh, and, you said something, we may not feel whole, but we are whole all of the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
And to reclaim those pieces
Yeah,
and,
I often,
and to accept, right?
yes, yes, because really, and I often think about shadow work along the same lines as the phases of the moon.
Mm.
So we see the moon in the sky, and
Hmm.
whether we see a crescent, a sliver, a half moon, a full moon, the moon itself is whole, no matter how much of it we see or don't see. So the
Right.
moon is constantly throughout its phases of the month, it is constantly concealing parts of itself and revealing parts of itself. We
Beautiful.
do the same thing. We are always whole. And yet we expend a tremendous amount of energy concealing parts of ourselves until we feel safe enough to reveal parts of ourselves. And part of the process of shadow work is being able to share and express ourselves fully without fear. And to me, that's freedom. And I'm not saying we want to overexpose ourselves. What I'm saying is, if we choose to withhold something, it's not out of fear, it's out of discernment.
Huge difference.
Huge.
Huge. Not out of fear, but through just out of discernment.
Mm-hmm.
It's so fabulous. Um, I love, since we've spoken last, I've been thinking so much about the shadow work. Um, how does accountability feed its way or, you know, become a part of this work within ourselves?
Sure, yes. So, what I'll first say is one of the things I love most about coaching is that it has its foundation in commitment, action, and accountability.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what I see often is that a client or student will show up not wanting me to be disappointed. So they will show up having done what they said they wanted to do. So, first, allowing me to hold them accountable until they feel strong enough to hold themselves accountable.
Mm.
It's always fascinating to me when a client shows up to a session and says, I'm so sorry, I didn't do the action I said I was going to do. And I will immediately put it back to them because it really isn't about me. I'm not the one who has been let down. They have let themselves down. And so, what I love about accountability is that it is an opportunity for us to show up for ourselves fully, to prioritize ourselves and our own needs. This is something I'm really on my soapbox about, reclaiming selfishness, recognizing that selfish, self care, and self love are three sisters whose job it is to support us in honoring ourselves. That is how we stay accountable to ourselves. We give ourselves permission to consider ourselves and our needs first and foremost.
You know, this is so important because I think that, and I had a conversation about this earlier, to prioritize ourselves and to give ourselves self care and self love. It's actually seemingly selfish. And even if it is selfish, that's okay too,
That's right.
because it's actually a gift to everyone else. Because then we show up in a manner that is real. And then if we are able to help them in some way, it becomes a gift to us.
Yes, and looking at this through the lens of the shadow, it's important to remember that we are everything. So I am selfish and selfless, not either or. I am lazy and productive, not
Yeah.
either or. So we want to make clear that no quality in and of itself is bad. Every single quality comes bearing gifts, and there is a great gift that comes along with selfish.
Yes. Yin and the yang a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The, it's very, it's kind of, you're educating and allowing people to embrace the gift of the parts that we that are in the shadow. We don't want to be
Exactly.
selfish or
Right.
lazy or all the things.
Right. And for any of us who relate to being recovering people pleasers, peacekeepers, conflict avoiders, not wanting to rock the boat. I lived decades of my life like that. What happens when we disown a part of ourselves is that we overcompensate for its existence.
Oh,
So, because I disowned lazy to such a degree, my overcompensation was workaholism.
oh yes.
If I disown selfish, the overcompensation is being a doormat.
Oh, yes.
So we want to also look at how are we participating in the overcompensation, and instead of instead of the either or, how do we embrace the both and?
Absolutely beautiful and so important and freeing.
Very.
Oh my goodness. And my goodness gracious. And once we're free, we become these more joyful.
Yeah, we become more joyful. We really, what happens is we feel more satisfied in our lives. We feel life has more meaning. We feel more fulfillment. And part of that is because we're willing to allow ourselves to expand our capacity to receive and have more.
Mm. Expand our capacity to receive and have more. Just this one conversation about accountability just opens doors. And the conversations are, ever evolving and beautiful. Well, tell me this. One of the reasons that we're all thrilled to do this summit is because the importance of accountability
Mm-hmm.
not be overlooked because it touches every area of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I am going to guess that many of the participants, those fortunate enough to hear you and to speak with you directly, are going to find that they've been overcompensating
Yes.
and they're exhausted.
Yes.
My goodness gracious.
And what happens when we reclaim a part of ourselves that we have rejected, it's astonishing how much more resourced we feel, how much energy we feel returning to us, because we are no longer expending energy to hide.
Unbelievable. And this is an aside. I'm going to bet it reduces judgment.
Very much so, because what happens is if I am feeling triggered by someone else
Yes.
and I'm pointing a finger at them, there's three fingers pointing back at us, right?
Yes.
And when I'm able to reconcile and have compassion for the quality inside of me, I'm no longer projecting it out onto others. I'm no longer harboring that judgment because I'm able to reconcile it. Now, I will say that there are times that I may not like someone else's behavior, even though I am going to reclaim the quality, and then I have choices to make. I have boundaries I can set. But the quality is what we're looking for here, and where can I find it in me?
And I love earlier you spoke about this that all qualities are charged neutral.
Yes.
I'm covered in chills. And then we then charge those.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is just so fabulous. I'm completely just, I- you cannot believe how much I've been thinking about it. And so I'm
Mm,
so happy to visit again. Now,
yes.
before we finish, please, a couple of things.
Yes.
One, do you have what would be an actionable step for the audience to take when they leave here? Like, oh my goodness, number one, we're going to tell them these beautiful gifts that you're offering, but what could someone do? They're like, okay, let me think about this for a moment.
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned my gift because, in a way, I would say that they are intertwined, what you're asking, because what I will really invite people to do is start recognizing
Mhm.
when they are triggered by someone else, when they feel activated by someone else,
Okay.
and to begin to identify the quality that's at the base and then look within for the way that you express that quality as well. It will show up differently than it shows up in someone else. And in the gift I'm giving, it's my becoming aware of your shadow free guide, and this is really here to help you recognize, reconcile, and reveal the true you. And in the guide, I take you through a process of being able to identify a quality you feel triggered in, the quality you don't want to be and are adamant that you're not, as well as the quality that you would like to be. So, looking at the people who you feel inspired by or enamored by and may not think you are, because we reclaim qualities from both sides.
Incredible. Thank you. What an incredible gift.
Mm, my
Oh my,
pleasure. My
oh my
pleasure.
goodness. I'm going to say thank you for the whole audience. I mean, that is just beautiful. Uh, really, this has been such a gift. I look so forward to our next conversation. But Nancy, this time has been just invaluable. Thank you so very much from all of us. And I will see you, I hope, very soon.
I hope so too. Thank you for having me.
Ah, what a gift. Bye bye.
Bye bye.